Good afternoon, Packers fans. Aaron Negler here with your Packers Daily Chat, coming to you live on the Cheesehead TV social channels. It is Thursday. We're almost to the weekend, and naturally, the start of March Madness is upon us. Big win for the Badgers earlier this afternoon. I'm sure you are all glued, or most of you are glued to the TVs on offer watching the madness. Great time of year, absolutely, especially because it can distract you from the fact that there really isn't much Packers news, as we've talked about throughout this week, other than the signing of McCole Hardman. Not a whole lot to kind of gin up interest in reading headlines when it comes to the green and gold, but that doesn't mean we don't do it here at Cheesehead TV throughout the season, throughout the off season. That's what we do. We talk with you guys, Packers fans worldwide, because that's who we're devoted to. I hope you're all doing well. Good to see so many of you already mixing it up in the comments prior to even the start of the stream. I really appreciate each and every one of you who get here early each and every day, especially Stu, who always starts us off with football. It's true, football, very much. A game that the Green Bay Packers play, and next year they will have a player on their offense who we don't really have a whole lot of information about when it comes to his ability to play in the National Football League. And of course, I am talking about MarShawn Lloyd, the former third-round pick, who usually if a guy ends up having an injury-riddled rookie season, you at least have some kind of idea of, okay, yeah, he didn't play much that year, but we saw him in camp and he seemed to hold up okay, or he seemed to be able to play at this level. And with Lloyd, you really don't have a whole lot to go on. He was injured for much of training camp. He did participate. He did get some action in the preseason, but through a number of different injuries, both last summer and then, of course, throughout the year, um, just don't really know much about his game as it transfers to the NFL. I still think there's a lot of promise there, and the exciting kind of proposition of having him as a complement to Josh Jacobs is certainly enticing. But man, you talk about, I guess you could call it a lottery ticket, as far as you just don't really know what you have there. Now, clearly, the Packers have a better idea than anybody, and I'm not sitting here telling you that he's a secret weapon who's ready to burst out. I mean, that would be great, but I don't expect that. But I do think he does get somewhat forgotten about when people are talking about the offensive side of the ball for the Packers, the need for a wide receiver, which, yes, is still very much a need. I don't discount that. But he could be a significant contributor. And I'm not saying he's going to split time even with Josh Jacobs, but somebody who could offer a dynamic presence whenever Josh Jacobs is out of the game. It will be a welcome development. And that's not to disparage Emmanuel Wilson or Chris Brooks, who I thought played very, very well last year. Wilson in particular, I thought had his best season as a pro. But the upside with Lloyd is undeniable in comparison. And just being able to continue to feature the running back, especially in the passing game, but not having that tell, as it were, when Jacobs is off the field. It's a pretty clear indication, more often than not, that they're going to throw the football. Having Lloyd in there and hopefully having a different style of back, some more of a slasher slash excellent vision, jump cut, get on the perimeter and make something happen style of back, to complement Jacobs' bruising nature and all of that he brings to the fore in the running game. I'm excited at the potential there. Now, there's a long way to go. The kid has to stay healthy, a number one, and stay on the field. But for all the hand wringing about their offense last year, they were still a top 10 offense that produced in most situations. Now, to Brian Gutekunst's point, they have to do a much better job in certain game-defining situations, controlling the football game. I think a step towards doing that is being able to have two backs who are very dynamic and can offer you a little something in every facet. I do not doubt for a moment that this kid will be given every opportunity to stake his claim this summer. And I, for one, am very excited to fast forward to training camp and see him, hopefully, again, staying healthy in the mix and offering something on offense that maybe we didn't see last season. That's where I'm crossing my fingers and hoping going forward. Good to see everybody. How are you? Good to see David here. Mastodon, what's other? How you doing? He's laughing. LOL. Sir, I'd go back and watch the college tape if I were you. And I'm not sitting here saying he's going to automatically transfer to the NFL, but the college tape is undeniable as far as a dynamic presence on the football field. You can quibble with that all you want, but if you say then I know I can dismiss your thoughts in entirety because no one knows how this kid is going to transfer to the NFL. We haven't seen it. And people who put their flag down and say, I know, usually they're just guessing. So, I mean, look, he may completely fizzle out and not help the Packers at all. That's entirely possible as well. But no one knows right now. That's what's fun. Joe, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. Getting Lloyd back like having an extra draft pick. Kind of. And a premium one at that. An additional third-round pick out of this draft. I'll take it. Andrew Ware, how are you, man? When Lloyd hits, watch the F out. I mean, he's he looks the part. Now, you never really know. We've seen plenty of backs who looked amazing in the college game, who really their skills and their athleticism never really transfers to the NFL. But man, I'm excited at the possibility. No question about it. This is Zach. I love it. It was awesome to see the Cubs' first loss of the year. Do you think the NFL will go to Tokyo? The NFL has been to Tokyo. When the Packers were coming off their Super Bowl victory in '96, that next preseason, they played in Tokyo. Do I think they'll have a regular season game there at some point? I absolutely do. We're getting a regular season game in Australia. So I don't doubt for a moment that Tokyo will get a regular season game at some point. Jim, how are you, man? Good to see you at Happy Hour the other night. Off topic, but I wanted to shout out Austin Kruger's post about the pass rush. Wonder if the rotation is why we have a new defensive line coach. Jim, I very much agree with you. That was a great piece by Austin. Featured it in our newsletter, which went out this morning. If you guys haven't signed up, there's a link in the description of this video to do so. You get weekly Packers goodness in your inbox throughout the offseason. Make sure you do so. And yeah, Austin was on point regarding a real disparate nature when it came to who was on the field when. And I don't know if it's a direct line, but I'm sure Jim, I gotta think there's a correlation there, right? Not just in how you're teaching them, but how you're rotating. It was one of my complaints back when Jerry Montgomery was in town, the way he would really lean on vets to the detriment of some of the younger guys. And I'm not saying Rebrovich did exactly that, but it seemed kind of similar. And Rebrovich obviously worked with Jerry. So I don't know. I think, again, I don't know if that's a direct reason, but I'm certain it's a contributing factor. Let's put it that way. And yes, if you guys haven't, make sure you read that piece by Austin. It's excellent. Jason, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. Getting Merkel is reminiscent of signing Desmond back in the day. I'm excited about this pickup. Jason, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw immediately after the news broke, lots of people were joking about, he's the new end around guy, and he's going to get the ball on an end around on fourth down. He's going to get tackled for a loss and it's going to be terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I somewhat jokingly, but also, hey, okay, if we're going to talk about the worst case scenario, I can also put out there the best case scenario, which is, maybe not exactly Desmond Howard, but Desmond Howard-like. There's every chance that he gets into camp and maybe doesn't wow the team or the fans and the media. And maybe it's coming down to that final preseason game. And then he rips off a huge return for a touchdown and they decide to keep him. And then he sparks the special teams and the return game in particular on their way to a great run to the Super Bowl, where he has a monster contribution, so big, in fact, that he is the Super Bowl MVP over Jordan Love. Do I think this is going to happen? Absolutely not. However, I can guarantee you the loudest voices, especially the ones that skew a little older and were around back in '96, the loudest voices that you see and hear today on this Al Gore internet saying, well, you can't dare to compare this signing with Desmond Howard, because they revere what Howard did and what he meant to that team. Understandably, right? But I guarantee you, those same voices back in 95, 96 were saying the same stuff about Desmond Howard that folks are saying about Mecole Hardman now. The truth is, we don't know. And it's a very, very minimal investment for a guy who should be able to contribute in a major way to an aspect of the game where they desperately needed help. So, you know, to sit here and say, again, much like I was talking about earlier, to say, whatever he's going to be, you have no idea what he's going to be. He could be the gadget end around guy who never really goes anywhere and never does anything, and fine, he peters out after a year and he's gone. Or he could be a major contributor and really help, again, spark a aspect of the game that needs help. Or, of course, he could lie somewhere in between, right? The fact is, no one knows. And it just kills me the way people speak with certainty about any of this. Of course, when I say this, and I understand, I get this, the internet, right? And this is how it works. But when I talk like this, people, oh, you're just straddling the fence. You just don't want to make a statement. It's like, no, I live in reality. And that means no one really knows. You can guess, you can have an idea. And I do think he is going to help the return game. I do think he is going to be probably the most dynamic punt returner they've had since Micah Hyde. I'm pretty solid on that one. But like to say, oh, he's not going to help at all, or he's going to be a Super Bowl MVP, you don't know. You're just guessing. It's okay to say that. You can tell you touched a nerve there, Jason. It's good stuff. Joseph, thanks for the super chat, man. Just wanted to say your episode this week with Justice was awesome. Great explainer of why the Packers might trade up or down. Thank you, Joseph. I'm glad you listened to it. I mean, we went a little long this week, but I thought, coming off of the first wave in particular of free agency, it's very clear the Packers have a lot of faith in where and how they're going to improve on this kind of roster, and that is from within. Now, of course, they're going to continue to make additions. Hell, they added Hardman after we recorded, right? That's going to continue. The draft is obviously going to happen, but it's very clear that they are expecting a lot of improvement from within the roster. So I thought it would be a good thought exercise to talk about that with Justice. And if you guys haven't checked it out, as Joseph has, I highly encourage you to do so. It's always illuminating whenever I talk to Justice about anything, but this topic in particular I thought was great. BC Podcast, how are you, man? People keep freaking out that we didn't address the pass rush or get a, quote, true number one, as if we don't have an actual NFL draft in a month. Yeah, but look, I understand trepidation from a fan base that has watched a team lean into draft and develop the way they have over the course of the last decade plus, right? And most of the time, not all the time, of course there are exceptions, but more often than not, with this franchise in particular, they tend to err on the side of guys with lots of upside, lots of athleticism, lots of room for development and growth, who rarely contribute right out of the gate. Now, again, that has somewhat changed the last couple of years, though most of these naysayers never acknowledge that. But traditionally, I can understand it. I can feel the hurt out there, But all you got to do, hell, look at Edgerrin Cooper this year and tell me a rookie can't come in and contribute right away. Like, I get it's not always happened, especially in the first round. But to pretend like the Packers haven't had rookies contribute these last 2-3 years in particular sure feels like there's a good opportunity in April's draft that they're going to add a handful of dudes who are going to contribute in 2025. That would be my guess. Nash, how are you? Thanks for the super chat. Do you think there's a chance that Kraft could turn into a Kittle type next year? I get asked this every once in a while, and I mean, my default setting is he just needs to be Tucker Kraft and the best version of Tucker Kraft that he can be. Now, could he have production like Kittle? I think there's a possibility. I think Matt tends to run his offense a little bit differently than Kyle does. And as of yet, I haven't really seen him commit to making Tucker a focal point week in and week out. Like, up to this point in his career, now it's only 2 years in, it's mostly been opponent specific from what I can tell, right? I think there's a chance to take advantage of this opponent with this personnel featuring Tucker, etc. But if that doesn't match up and they don't think there's an advantage there personnel wise, he's relegated to more kind of blocking, maybe clear out stuff, etc. I mean, there are games where you go and you watch and he doesn't even get a target, or maybe if he does, it's like late in the game. Whereas with Kittle, he is a focal point of the offense. He is on the play sheet. There is a section dedicated to him very clearly. Now, can Tucker get to that point? Could this be the year that he gets his own section on the play sheet? Absolutely. And it's something that I get back to a lot. You guys hear me yell it on watch parties if you are, masochistic enough to watch along with us each and every week. That's something I always the mantra I keep repeating when watching the Packers is, think, Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. And I do think every once in a while, Matt tends to get lost in the wilderness of the X's and O's rather than focusing on, I got to get Tucker the ball. I got to get Christian Watson the ball. And that seemed to change at times last year. But for the most part, it takes a dedication of we're going to spend the week making sure we got, 15 plays where Tucker is the first option. We're going to make sure we get to most of them on Sunday. And if that happens, and I do think it could, yeah, he has the chance to be as productive as Kittle. Let's put it that way, if that development occurs. Hey, Porkmaster, what's up, man? I hope Lloyd is good. I watch his highlights a lot. I mean, they're exciting. They are very exciting. No two ways about it. But, highlights are one thing. Highlights against the future gym teachers of America is one thing. But, doing it in the NFL, it's a whole nother world. What else we got here, folks? Oh, Soder's in here grumbling that, and they lean on Dean Lowry types for the pass rush. I'm pretty sure this is in reference to something going on in the chat, but that was the big kind of misgiving I had about Jerry Montgomery. I mean, never forget Devontae Wyatt's rookie year. The kid couldn't even get on the field because they were acquiescing to the Dean Lowry types. Now, I don't think Dean was with us still at that point, but you know what I mean. Like, can we let the youth eat, please? At some point. Robin, it's an entirely possible situation. Musgrave comeback next season. I mean, I talked about this a couple weeks ago here on Daily. He is somebody who does get forgotten a lot when it comes to the Packers needing a dynamic presence down the field, the ability to run the seam, maybe not traditional ways that most people think of when talk about taking the top off the defense, but certainly speed at the position that has to be accounted for. Now, he's got to improve in every aspect of his game, including and most importantly, his blocking, because right now he's a liability in two ways. He's not a great blocker, and teams can take advantage of him when they do try to run the ball and or use the Packers use him in pass protection, keep him in, etc. Or two, when they see Musgrave on the field, especially if he goes in motion or splits out, they know they're throwing the ball. So he can't be a tell. He's got to get better in the kind of physical aspect of the football of the game. That has to happen. Woo! David in here saying Kraft could be a Hall of Fame tight end. All right, let's have him make a Pro Bowl first. Let's baby steps here. Let's one thing at a time. Brandy, that's a understandable question here. Nags, was Wilson on the same level as McDuffie? Wilson made some plays for sure. I thought Wilson played well when called upon after guys went down in the middle, most notably Quay Walker. But I do think McDuffie is probably the more solid player overall. I thought Wilson, both of them really kind of got taken advantage of in the passing game. But Wilson in particular, I mean, I couldn't live with another 3rd and 6 where he drops 8 yards into a zone and only to allow the completion over the middle for a first down at the 6-yard mark. I couldn't live like that again. And look, McDuffie's younger. Wilson's 30 plus. I understood letting him walk and going with the young guy who has familiarity with the defensive coordinator, started a lot of games for you last year, has played a lot in this defense. I'm not surprised they went that route. Rai, this is a good question. Do the Packers slightly alter their thresholds for free agents? The logic being they've proven any physical/athletic limitations haven't hindered their game. Rai, I've seen this discussed a little bit this offseason, both online and other places, but I think there's some truth to that, but I do think the pro personnel group is still working within certain parameters. But to your point, I do think, yeah, they're probably looking at NFL production and weighing that when it comes to, well, should we bring them in or not, or should that guy be on our free agent board, etc. Um, but I still think, more often than not, too, you got to remember a lot of the guys that they look at in free agency are guys that they were looking at in the pre-draft process. Oftentimes, they're just tracking their progress throughout the league, and when there's an opportunity to bring them in, they do so. Andre Dillard last year is a perfect example. That's a guy they really liked in the draft, who obviously got drafted by Philadelphia, spent time in Philly, Tennessee, and then they had a chance and they signed him. And that's a guy they knew all about from his time in the draft. So more often than not, when they bring a guy in, they've known and tracked him for a long time, including whatever those thresholds may be. They're most likely going to fit within them. Now, I do think, there's every possibility that, yeah, if you're in the NFL and you've played and, you've produced at a very high level consistently, there's a decent chance they may fudge those just a little bit. Rick Harris, I've seen this topic anyway, brought up a lot in the last couple of days. Now, could this be Kenny Clark's and Elton Jenkins' last season in Green Bay? I think is the indication here, the implication here. Could it be? Sure. Do I think it will be for Elton? No. Do I think it will be for Kenny? More likely than not. Yeah. I think with the way Kenny's contract is situated, they can get out out of it this next offseason heading into 2026 with a minimal amount of pain. Sure, they could restructure, but I don't know why either party would want to do that. I think, yeah, there's a decent chance. Now, unless, of course, the caveat here is if Kenny has a turn back the clock type performance and is absolutely a terror when it comes to getting after the quarterback, maybe they adjust something there and maybe they do bring him back for 2026. But I think the draft will tell us a lot. And if you see, a couple of defensive tackles taken, that's probably a good indicator that Kenny's going to be playing his last year in Green Bay. And it sucks, man, but Father Time is undefeated. And the Packers are got to start planning for the future. Especially, we always talk about how young Kenny is, and that is very true. For as long as he's played in Green Bay, he is still a young guy, but he has a bunch of tread. He's logged a lot of miles on those tires. So, yeah, between those two, I think there's a better chance that this is Kenny's last year in Green Bay. As far as Elton goes, I know there's a lot talked about with the contract situation up front across the offensive line and how that might squeeze Elton out. But man, if he plays as well at center as I suspect they think he will, I'd be very surprised. Ian, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. Aaron, have you looked at any of the later round receivers? Love Isaac Tesla and Dante Thornton, by the way. More likely they take a mid-round wide receiver and a round one wide receiver. Thanks for everything you do, Aaron. You're the best. Thank you, Ian. That's very kind of you. Thank you for the kind words. I have not looked at any of the late round guys yet. Mostly because I'm set on the idea of them taking Jaden Higgins in the second round. That, to me, is the one you should circle. I dream about Matthew Golden in the first round, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's incredibly unlikely, but yeah, Jaden Higgins is my guy. And I'm very excited to be disappointed on draft weekend when he gets drafted by somebody else. But, that doesn't mean that, day 3 won't be an option. I do think there's a decent chance they take one guy early and probably maybe, and if the board falls the right way, they take another guy late. But I will be talking to Emery Hunt here in the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft. I do it every year. Emery, he is amazing. If you don't follow his work, both the things he does on his own, but his work with CBS, etc. Highly recommend you do so. That guy watches more football than probably anybody alive, and he sees every small school prospect, every podunk Division III dude, etc. So each and every year, I try and do at least one video with him where we talk about guys who most likely will be drafted on day 3, and we'll certainly get to a lot of those day 3 type wide receivers when I do so. So make sure you check that out. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to get going. I cannot thank you enough for hanging out, talking Packers each and every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Cheesehead TV social channels. Please do me a monster favor. Hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then tell your friends and tell your family Cheesehead TV. We are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. Go Pack Go.